be talking about the YouTube and things. And I would ask you to bear with my ignorance of things about, because it's really important, it seems to me, software development and so forth. And I don't understand it at all, so I'll be learning, so bear with me, okay?
Sure.
Okay, very good. And welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program. If I may, at the very, very outset, say a sterling new addition to the lineup of programming on MNN, and that being, he's a programmer here, and he's working here at MNN, and congratulations, welcome very much aboard. And his name is Lester Veczey, and we've got him up as a software developer. And we're going to be talking about that as well as a cable producer. And Lester, welcome really very, very much to Conversation Manhattan Network.
Thank you.
My great good pleasure. You're a software, and we're going to be talking about that, and you're very knowledgeable about some of the technological developments that are so crucial to understanding the human condition and so forth. But I wonder if you could, please, because we like to do it, share your background, where you're born and raised, education, and then we'll get talking about what is this thing called software and some of those kind of issues, if you don't mind.
Well,
your own background.
I was born here in America, in New Jersey. I grew up and went to a technical science high school.
Which one?
Well, it's the Academy for the Advancement of Science and Technology.
At Princeton?
No, that's in
that's a different one.
That's in Bergen County. Yeah. It was a magnet high school.
A magnet.
And they focused on the sciences and technology as well.
What is a magnet high school?
Well, my local high school was a very good high school, about 2,000 students, and I have an older sister, and I plan to go to that school. But this new high school opened up in Hackensack, New Jersey, Bergen County, and you basically apply there, and if they see that you have the credentials or you're an interesting person, they accept you in. And there were actually only 50 students the first year.
50 students. It was a new developing school?
That's right.
And magnet school magnet thinks of something that attracts.
They're just attracting people from the Bergen County area.
That's where the term comes from.
That's right.
And do they then have a focus, maybe like in your case, science and technology?
Yes.
Or
so many students focused on biology. I was one of the few people that really had a very strong interest in computers.
You've had that for a long time?
Yes,
since you were very young?
Since about 7 years old.
When did you have your first computer? How old were you when you had the first computer?
Around 6 or 7. It was a Sanyo computer. It's not even an IBM compatible. What we think of today as a common computer.
Just came into your life?
Well, my father purchased it, and
for himself or for you? Not for you. He wasn't thinking of you.
Well, he actually didn't use it much, but possibly for both of us, really.
Yeah. And he was encouraging you in that.
Yes,
I don't mean to pry. What was your dad up to?
Oh, my father owns a security company in northern New Jersey. And I actually help him often installing residential security and even video surveillance systems.
Okay, so I see. But you were always interested in the science, and you were encouraged in the home in terms of learning, and you.
That's right.
You know, interest, curiosity. You have curiosity along scientific terms.
Right. Actually, it started with once I got beyond that computer, there were the regular IBM PC computers that came along.
Yeah.
And I, for example, got a few computer games, and even the process of installing the video game, you need to follow the manual and the instructions. So those steps get you more involved with the computer. And just as a hobby, I just continued learning more about it and programming. And
the more you learn, the more you know.
Yes.
You're. I don't mean to pry again, but you're relative. You're not 30 yet, even.
No.
You're in your.
I'll be 29 in January.
29. So you're in your prime in a certain sense. And certain that are your colleagues or your peers. Let's say 29, 20 people in their late 20s and so on. Does everybody know how to make the computer work?
No, I'd say not that many people. In fact, Bill Gates mentioned in recent years that he was a bit discouraged that younger kids are not really pursuing the computer sciences anymore.
Interesting.
For example, because of 9/11, many young kids are unsure of the future, and for whatever reason, they're not really focusing on the computers or computer science. They're maybe going into other fields.
Investment banking?
Could be.
That kind of thing and that.
Right.
Were you interested in literature and that kind of thing? Art, music, that kind of thing?
Actually,
you got the old thing. Who was it who wrote the book? C.P. Snow. Art and science are two things that are sort of parts of the human knowledge base and that, yeah.
There's actually a book, Gödel, Escher, and
Oh,
Bach.
yeah,
Yes.
right, yes,
And
yeah,
that tends to mix the music and the art and
Uh-huh.
science. My mother encouraged me with piano from a young age, so actually...
Good for her there.
And I've been keeping up with that
Yeah.
through all these years.
And then you went to the high school, and we have the Bronx School for Science and Technology or something it is up there. That's been known as a really super school, as
Right.
it were in a certain sense, for a long time. Is the magnet school you were in going along the lines
I think that's a similar concept.
And was there a entrance thing you had to do in order to be admitted into that school?
There was
Uh-huh.
a few interviews, and so it's a similar concept to the other schools. I recall one feature we had was a very high-capacity video link to link us with other schools.
Yeah.
This was considered the future of education, that we could have this connectivity.
Yeah, this was coming, and then you had the grade school, that kind of stuff, all that normal and that and everything, and then you went to the high school. And then did you, after you did that, you were 4 years, I guess it is, high school or something, and you're concentrating in computer science?
Well, we had the general sciences. In fact, within 3 years, we had a full high school education. So the fourth year was dedicated to a project of our own. For example, I interned at ABC Graphics in New York doing computer graphics there. So that was my project for the senior year. Other students interested in biology, for example, did, for example, an extended project on studying fish or just different topics like that. And
then, okay, that's good. That's high school. It's pretty rigorous, and
Yes.
you were enjoying it. Did you enjoy high school? You could hardly wait up in the morning to get there in order to get involved in the process that was involved in the education of that, or did you have to do something? Just the first year.
Just the first year.
After the first year, you didn't enjoy it so much.
Not so much.
Why do you think?
Well, I think this was a new educational concept.
Yeah, the magnet school.
That's right.
What was the new about it? I mean,
well, just it really drew on many of the concepts from college, for example, or for example, rotating the class structure. The day was a little bit longer. From, it ended at 4:30. The school started in August, so extended school year, extended hours, classes being rotated, and maybe more of an emphasis on using computers in the classroom. But after the first year, it became more of a routine and just less interested, really.
Interested in less discovery on your own, or what? What I'm trying to get at is a philosophy of education.
Right.
I mean, there's some people think that. I see some people who think of the schools as like a minimal security correctional facility aligned with the prison system. They're trying to get you so you'll do what you're told by an authority figure to fit into a corporate bureaucracy.
That's right.
And that it's dumbing down or it's numbing the capacity that the human mind seems. You took it a 5-year-old. I just saw some of the buses today. They're so gorgeous and they're so curious and everything. And you know what I'm saying?
I'd agree with that they're training us to fit into the corporate world and basically obey, what we need to do there. I read something interesting.
You do agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I read something interesting recently where a substitute teacher was going to different classes in New York and decided to, for example, teach some Spanish students how to tell time. And they took maybe 15 minutes to go over something, and the students actually picked up something. And later the principal came back and said, what have you done? You've messed up our whole curriculum for the next 2 or 3 months.
Oh, really?
So you just imagine 15 minutes of quality time destroy. What would they have learned in those 2 or 3 months? Not much, because they're just being. Really, the students aren't given the ability to work on individual. What they're individually interested in, and to focus on that. They're just being slowly pushed through a process.
Well, it's to teach them to fit into a thing where they'll do what they're told. In a certain sense, there's a lot of people sort of think that, and a lot of people who have an idea of how things should be structured, and what they think doesn't matter. Just do what you're told.
Right.
Is the kind of attitude a lot of people have toward human resources or human capability. The other side is sort of a creative recognition of individual. Have you heard of the term autodidactic?
Yes, I have, actually.
Does that make sense to you? That's where you teach yourself because that's what you're really interested in?
To a certain extent. And
to a certain extent.
And we have, the internet...
Why not until a complete extent? Why don't we just turn everything into an auto and let people run down when they're really in... Or do you think... Are there certain things you have to... You do a computer software development.
Yes.
And there's discipline. There's
Right.
a term discipline. And you have to learn, and some people think you have to learn certain things prerequisite to learning something more, and there's that linear building, and they have that notion, and that's what's behind the educational thing. You have to learn certain things. We don't have to learn to talk. You notice? You don't have to be taught to talk. You just learn it at your mother's knee or by osmosis.
Right, you pick up much of it.
What do we have to learn? Is there something that we have to be taught, whether we like it or not? Like Latin, you had to do all those irregular verbs. I don't remember any of them.
Right.
Or I don't remember. My kid came, if I may. He was 8 years, and he wanted me to help him with his equation, with the algebra. Couldn't remember it at all. It was
Right.
very disquieting. But you understand what I'm saying? Is there a certain thing? Can they get rid of that thing about you have to learn this, learn this, learn this, and then just let people go and learn what it is they're really interested in? Where can we let people be free academically or intellectually to follow their own lead?
I think that some of the skills you mentioned, they can be considered a foundation for future tasks. And if you were to continue to use them regularly, you know, they'd be helpful to you. They wouldn't just be forgotten. But it's, in terms of software development, it's interesting.
That's what we're supposed to be talking about, actually. But it all ties together.
Right. You can, individually, you can learn quite a lot with material that's out on the internet.
Yeah.
And however, there's many large projects that have come together involving thousands of people, oftentimes each person working on a small section of a larger project. And that's made possible by the internet and communication and rigorous testing of thousands of people every day testing the software. And so individually, someone can't really accomplish that.
Testing the software that lets the people interaccommodate?
Well, every day the software is updated. So all the participants get the new version of the software, and they can test it again and improve their section of it.
Okay.
So you mentioned autodidactic.
I think in general it means self-taught.
Right.
You teach yourself what it is you're interested in. I'm very much that way. I think I've always just wanted to. If you're interested in something, you're really trying to run it down like a hound dog runs down a fox. You just knock yourself out going to get it because you want to do it, not because it's something somebody else tells you you should know for some reason you don't understand why you have to know it.
Right. And I think
it's a certain view of human nature, maybe, also.
You can do that to a point, I think, with what I mean by that, with the internet, with all the communication we have
Increasingly now you can. The internet is like a great big university of the sky. MIT, all the curriculum is on the internet now, of the MIT.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, yeah.
Individually, you can study and learn quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't really be able to accomplish bigger things unless these individual people are connected to each other and you're developing something larger beyond what just one person can do. So that's what I mean autodidactic to a point, because you still need to interact with other people in a project, for example.
Yeah. Well, if you're in a project or something, that idea of socializing, they say you're also learning to interrelate with other human beings. You're being socialized to relate in a community or a group thing and that kind of stuff, which is part of growing up. When does the schooling process end? Or does it end?
Well, for some people, never. Some people always want to learn further. Right.
Yeah. It seems inherent to me that that's the case. And you brought up the term, the fateful term that we want to discuss here in some detail, and bear with my ignorance, software.
Right.
Now, you're a software developer.
Right.
Could you kind of explain it to us? Because like I was saying to you chatting before we started, when I was growing up, there was nothing in our world that we had to program. You just turned the radio on and it worked.
Right.
Now it seems my whole life is spent trying to figure out how to do another device that you have to go through 6 pages of trying to understand to program the darn thing. But programming, computer programming. What are we talking about? And that's the science and the thing that you're studying.
That's right.
And I'm to talk. Okay.
Well, I'll just give you a bit of more background. While I was in high school, I created an internet service in New Jersey for my home, which this was dial-up access and web hosting and email for the Bergen County community.
Okay.
So by setting this up, I was actually more involved with software and programming and actually building something that people could dial into and access the internet with. This is really the start of the popular web internet.
Okay, programming then comes in, and programming is absolutely crucial now in terms of the whole human condition. It didn't exist when I was your age.
Well,
Something's happened, and what it is, I guess, is a new, what we talk, the postmodern world or the emergence of an information technology or something. It's become very important, and what we're talking about is an intelligent application of telling machines that can do things as we order them to do it in a way that it hasn't been existing in history and that sort of thing.
Well,
and what are the implications of it, and what are the characteristics of a good programmer, what's involved, that sort of thing.
Well, if we look at some examples of programming, you might think of your VCR. Nobody wants to program their VCR.
They're all flashing 12 because people
Right.
can't figure it out, and that's relatively simple, right?
Well, you could turn on the machine at noon, and then it will start ticking at 12. I suppose that's one way to deal with it. But programming a VCR may seem complicated. You've got to read through whole manuals.
You try to read those directions. It's written by somebody from Mars. They don't make it simple.
Right.
Or maybe, okay, I'm sorry.
Actually, when the VCR is designed, they sometimes try to use the least amount of chips, and they try to make the manufacturing process efficient. But maybe what you sacrifice is people need to read through the manuals to program that specifically. Another example is the mouse, when that was invented by Xerox, really intended just for a photocopier. You maybe move documents around, you print your document, and that's it. Today, everybody wants to have a simple application that just uses a mouse and a few clicks. So we're all conforming to this type of interface. But I think it's actually better to spend some time and acquire a skill, like we were talking about, like Latin or these math skills. Actually spend some time to get skills for a specific application. So you're not just conforming to maybe moving a mouse to a menu and making every application behave the same. You're actually studying, investing a few hours and studying, learning maybe some keystrokes on the keyboard, making yourself more efficient interacting with the computer. You're actually using the computer as a more productive tool.
Are you talking about the general society, or are you talking about the people who are in the realm of programming?
No, I'm talking about general society.
General
too,
society.
Right.
So make yourself aware of what's in the computer. There's a great deal that's involved with the computer. And you could spend a whole life trying to understand all the stuff that's in there, it seems to me, you know.
You could spend about 10 years, I think.
You could easily, I mean,
Right.
full time, full at it, trying to understand all the things. If I may, there's a thing now, a friend of mine, Mark Stallman, he's a guy who took AOL public when he was an investment banker and everything, but he was a scholar, and he was very knowledgeable. And the IBM Corporation, which is a big software a big player, as it were, in the cyber world, has on their site, you could go to it, ibm.com/research, and they have a manifesto on IT, information technology,
Right.
and it's done with the people at IBM and with the major people who are involved in the whole industry and everything, and they have it, and it's called autonomic computing, and they say they are simply going to have to make the process simple.
Right.
It's going to have to be autonomic. It's all done by engineers with choices all over the place you have to do. You don't have to choose to have your hair grow. It just does. And they got a manifesto, and they say that if they don't, it's going to break down in complexity because of all the different kinds of things. It gets more and more complex, out of control or something. And they made a manifesto along that line. And they say we need to have it's worth reading, and they've got it. It says they have to make it simple. They have to get pattern recognition and simple, like a biological system or something, where a lot of things are done autonomically. You don't have to make choices all over the place with the mind of an engineer,
Right.
or something. Does that make any sense, or does that seem simplistic to you?
No,
or would you want to visit it, maybe?
Yeah, I will take a look at that.
Thank you.
What it reminds me of is, for example, a constraint system. In other words, if you may have a graphics program where you can, you want something to look aesthetically, want it to look nice, so you can choose between certain textures or graphics, and so you're constrained within a certain set of choices. So, for example, what IBM might be doing here is you're not letting the user choose every last detail, but you are constraining them to like a universe of choices that they're dealing with.
Right.
And
that's what you're saying in a certain sense, that you got more choice. Do we need 16 million hues of blue? Or what I'm saying is, do the people do? I mean, engineers or people, they want to get that possibility of all that opening up,
right.
but then the complexity of it, and mind you, young man, if I may, people coming, we didn't have to program anything.
Right.
I mean, a typewriter, you had to learn to type. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Until the VCR, they're flashing 12 because nobody could figure it out. And then the computer's got all this complexity. Is it getting easier? It used to be more difficult with all the programming that went into making a computer work or something. Is it getting more user-friendly, the computer, in your view? Or what do you think? I mean, so far as the general citizenry.
Well, I think it's interesting that some people have said that software development will eventually just become a hobby. Not even, for example, if a company needs some new functionality added to some in-house software, they can hire a programmer today to make a few changes, and that software can be given out. It can be added to a larger set of software that's basically free software out on the internet. So if a company needs something customized for them, they hire a programmer and they put the change in, and actually all the other companies out there can benefit from that change too. So in that sense, software developers would just be hired for those tasks, and eventually maybe they won't even be needed for that, and software development would become more of a hobby. And you know, programming in many ways, people sit down and they just explore explorative programming, kind of like artwork. They're just designing something on the fly. And as they continue with it, they make more changes and maybe make it more compact, and they develop that way. Another way is really to think about it as an engineering task and design everything from the beginning.
Okay.
So now, in terms of whether computers are becoming easier to use, it's hard to answer that really.
Okay.
I think that people are used to having a one way to use the computer. You move the mouse, you make a few clicks. Everybody wants the applications to behave the same way. My preference really would be to move away from that. Actually, if you need to do, for example, video editing, then the user should take some time, learn the keyboard shortcuts, and become very proficient with doing a video editing task. If you need to use a word processor, then there's a whole totally separate set of tasks, and we shouldn't, you know,
both of which can be performed by the computer.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and we don't necessarily have to use just the keyboard. We can have other types of input or interfacing with the computer if it's more efficient. It might seem a totally strange idea to have a different interface, but if you're more productive with it, it's worth it to use it, and even to spend some more time training yourself to be productive with it. So.
Okay, I wonder maybe you studied and then you went on to university. We talked to your magnet school. You went to university and studied
after school I did 1 year of engineering.
I see.
But really I focused on the internet business and continued in the background, basically continued with software development. And I worked for a few years as an IT administrator for a few startups in New York City. And right now I'm developing a chess-based software
I've seen
site.
it. I really think it's interesting. We want to talk about it. It's PayChess. It's there.
That's right.
You got a site there. It's PayChess. You've developed that yourself,
That's right.
It's a thing where people can play chess across the world.
Yes, they can play against each other. And it's really, the concept is creating an environment where you're immersed in chess. So this could be collaborative chess. You can video conference with another participant. You can have, you know, basically a dozen eyeballs on the chess game or more. And
each not participating in the moves, though, are they?
Right. You could think of it as like a stadium, or they're watching a football game on the sides, and they're just watching the game, or maybe they have some comments.
Okay, you got a chess game. There's 2 players and 10 watchers.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
not to 10, 12 players. That would get incredibly complex.
Well, there are other combinations.
They could rotate who gets to make the move or something.
That's it.
Do they do that? They have team chess.
Well, they have online tournaments. I'm not sure they have that exact.
I just maybe invented a new game.
Right.
Yeah, you have, you know, but yeah.
You could even have, if you had 1,000 people, they can vote on the move. For example,
Oh, you have a democratic vote.
Kasparov had something like a 45-day game against the whole world, and every day people collectively voted for the best move.
Really?
And then he competed against that selection.
Who won, the world or Kasparov?
I think Kasparov actually
Did
won.
he? Okay, well, I don't know if there's a message in there. Anyway.
Near the end of the game, the votes, I guess society blundered a bit. So.
Well, it was amazing to me, and I think I shared it with you, and it has with others too. This fellow, I like Kurzweil. I don't know. You said you've been to his site. I think it's
briefly.
really interesting. There's some issues you could bring up, but he made a book. He made a projection on. I think it's something called algorithms or something. And we want to get into this and everything. But he said he made a projection from 10 years out to within a couple of 3 months of when the computer, Big Blue, I guess it was with the IBM, was going to defeat the world chess champion because of the exponential increasing. So you can make projections about these kind of things that are of the computing power, and that computing power is growing all the time, isn't it?
Yes.
It's getting richer and richer and richer, and it's growing exponentially almost now, our computing capability.
But it's interesting also that the game of chess, there's more games possible in the game of chess than the estimated number of atoms in the whole universe.
You told me that. I had told you there was 100 trillion cells in the human organism, and you told me, well, that's interesting, but I'll tell you, they've got an estimate of how many atoms there are in the universe.
That's right.
And there's more chess games than there are atoms in the universe?
So with our computers...
That's verifiable? You got a link on that or a site?
I'll send you the information on that.
How many atoms are there in the universe? That must be a pretty big number.
Yeah, it's 10 to a very big number, I'm sure.
I don't even want to go. All right, yeah.
So you can't actually analyze all the moves in a chess game like that.
Really? Is that kind of thing?
It's interesting when Kasparov played against Big Blue. Big Blue exponentially, it's getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
But
it's like an idiot savant thing, though, I think, in a way. Yeah, but go ahead. Yeah,
because it's specific to that one task.
Yeah, right, yeah.
In fact, they added processors initially, at least, specifically for computing chess. I think later they moved to a general purpose computer. I'm not sure about that. But, so it's interesting also that there's something called advanced chess, is where you mix, for example, an experienced grandmaster with the analysis of the computer. So you end up with a hybrid in a sense. You're using the computer analysis but making a better move based on that, because the computer can only see so deep in the game. As I said, there's more atoms in the universe. There's not enough time to compute everything. So you're using the computer analysis to just give you a hint as to what's the best path to take.
There's more atoms there's more chess moves possible than there are atoms in the universe.
Right, which means there's no time to compute everything. We don't have enough time to do it.
That's really interesting.
Right.
And you're going to send me the source on that, right?
Yes.
Who measured the atoms in the universe? I don't know. Okay, that's really interesting. But bear with me. You're a software developer now.
Yes.
Software is, as I understand it, like a layman, that's the commands that make the computers or the computing capability system or something do what it's capable of doing.
Right.
Could you start in a very summary way what that is and what are some of the skills that going into making a what are we talking about when we talk about a software program?
Well, it's really an engineering task. You need to tell the computer what you want it to do. You can lay out what the program is or the steps that it should follow. One way to think about it is if you visit a web page, the web page in a sense you can think of as a computer program or data, because when the web page starts, you might have an image at the top left corner, and it continues with the paragraph, and continues with different elements. Those elements are all strung together in a sequence. You could think of that as a program or data, and your web browser is actually processing that data. So if you learn how to design a web page, that's, in a sense, a simple way of programming.
Design a web page.
Right.
Now, what's involved? What is happening when you design a web page as a programmer would look at that?
Right.
Now, they got a thing called, like, Microsoft, they have a thing, front page, where you can edit things and everything. A lot of that's been put into a thing that people can use in a simple kind of way. But what's going on?
Well, that's another example of a program where you have a certain elements like your mouse and menu system. People are comfortable with this way of interacting with the computer. And so you're laying out the page, laying out where you want certain images or a movie, you're laying out the text, the size, the colors.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another way is to actually use a text editor,
Mm-hmm.
and many expert web developers do this, where they just type in with text what text they want bold, and they lay out the page that way.
Mm-hmm.
It almost looks like a simplified word processor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can also write additional programs that will generate that text. So you're moving a layer back. You're not really using mouse clicks and menus anymore, and you're not even typing in the web page directly.
What are you doing?
But you're writing software, developing at a layer removed.
A layer removed.
Yes.
Is that what they call algorithms, or is that off base on it? That's a series of commands or something, or is it like a genetic code or something?
Well, when you go a layer back, as I was saying,
Yeah, a layer back. Yeah.
you're creating an abstraction in a way.
Uh-huh.
So you could have an algorithm which will take the
What is
top,
an
the top
algorithm?
layer.
What is an algorithm?
Well, it will transform something. So you take this top layer,
Mhm.
and then you transform it to the web page, and the web page gets loaded onto the computer server. So the algorithm really, it's a transformation or a computation.
It's not like an equation or an algebra. Or
It
something.
can be in many cases. Sometimes computer programs you can't describe in a simple way. You need to have more steps, and you can't really put it into like a 2-inch equation.
We've talked to you. We've talked to you all. Yeah, it's really. Welcome aboard. It's so nice
Thank
to have
you.
you around. It's really nice to interesting like that. And you're doing great help and helping a lot of people, and you do your program. But I remember we had the thing 100 trillion cells in a human
Right.
organism is apparently the case, and it's all overlaid as a system. It works as you work as a system. I work as a system.
Right.
Every cell, 100 trillion is staggeringly complex. And everyone has to have oxygen, has to have semi-permeable thing, bone cells, all kinds of cells, and it's all overlaid with a DNA, which we've just sequenced and everything for the whole species, which gives it a design that makes it a system.
Right.
And is the algorithm or the software comparable, biological metaphor, to the DNA that gives a system's completion to the human organism, bringing together 100 trillion cells as a system, you know? Is there an analogy
yes,
there?
in many
And
ways.
we're heading toward carbon-60. We're heading toward carbon-60 in terms of the computing developments coming, as I understand, right?
You should remind me what that
Well, that's
is
just
in
the
the
thing that they're going to be moving past silicon.
Okay.
You know, they're going to be moving to carbon-60, and it's going to be ever more accelerating faster than Moore's law in terms of the increasing capability to manipulate data.
Right.
And that's coming in a couple, 3 years, I guess.
Well, I think it's interesting
It's
that
going to be moving toward molecular computing. It's
well,
staggering hard to get. But
we have these large atom smashers, and there's an even larger one being built around the horizon. And so we know that when we look at the DNA molecule, we know that that's really like a core element, each part of the DNA. There's nothing really more minuscule than that. So
when you get down molecular, it's
So-
going to go through the bloodstream.
Right.
A computing system would be going through the bloodstream. And it's the basis of nanotechnology. Oh, I'm sorry.
well, if you think about the DNA as like 3 billion bits or a compact computer program,
fair to think of it that way?
That's
Or
a
is there
very
an
good
analogy? Yeah?
between the DNA being the program and the cell is this initial system that can replicate itself.
Yeah, or
And
protein. Yeah.
the way I link that to the atom smasher comment, though, is that there's theories in the universe that there may be dark matter, or there's this additional matter that we don't know about
Right.
yet. With
A
these
lot of the universe seems to be that.
right.
Yeah.
And with the atom smashers, we know that when we look at the DNA, for example, we're reasonably sure that there's not something even more minuscule that is somehow interacting or constructing
Quark
the DNA.
or something.
But we actually think the DNA is like a base element.
Okay, yeah.
So it's just interesting to see
Yeah.
the DNA and the cell as a system that replicates almost like a computer program to generate us.
Yeah, like the cell would be the hardware and the DNA would be the software.
That's right.
And you got now you're generating software for technology,
Right.
and the technology is all. So you're like God. If some people see God, who set up the DNA code that makes you a system? That's a question,
Right.
I guess, a philosophical thing that people are interested in and so forth. How did it get? It's amazing to me, Lester, that anything exists.
Right.
Do you know how unlikely it is that anything should exist? Because the things that had to happen were just such a carefully balanced calibration and everything, that anything emerged, that there's anything rather than nothing, is really pretty amazing. And here we are taking the measure of the whole universe now.
Right.
Isn't it an exciting time to be alive?
It is exciting.
Isn't it though? You find it that way too?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's amazingly exciting. And you're involved with this software, so you're on you're like a DNA creator. You're creating DNA for extended consciousness, and the technology is all extended consciousness.
Well, it's interesting to think
we
about
fashioned
the scale of things. For example, these computers, we talk about, you mentioned carbon-60 and making the processors
Buckminster
tinier.
fullerene, buckyballs, and that's going to be the basis of all the nanotechnology also, and that's going to be the basis of computing after the silicon chip. And no human being could ever make an integrated circuit, could they? You couldn't make an integrated circuit.
Well,
it's got to be technological. It's so oh, go ahead.
Well, we designed the processes to make that
but
possible.
you couldn't make it. It's like you used to be able to make a horseshoe.
Right, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but you can't do that. It's got to be machines that can do that.
But a computer device, for
example... And somebody has to program the machine.
Right.
That's like you all, programmers.
Well, we design tools to allow us to make these small microchips, but it's interesting to look at the computer.
You ever feel like God? No, I mean, it's really important what you're doing. It really is. And I'm sorry I'm so ignorant, but go ahead, I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, a computer, it has some very tiny parts like the microprocessor with very tiny components, but in many senses it's still a very large-scale object.
Yeah.
If you wanted to really break down the components of a computer, you've got this aluminum chassis, you have memory chips which contain very small silicon intricate circuits. You've got other circuits on the motherboard connected with essentially wires which are fairly large scale if you think about the number of atoms in them. So in a way, you're programming some instructions to be fed through the processor, but the majority of the computer is really a large set of atoms. It's the same way that you mentioned the numbers of cells in the human body, 100 trillion. The blood supply is actually a large number of
you
cells.
told me the intestine was a lot.
The intestine is another large number. And so the number of atoms for our bone or other tissue is smaller in comparison. Our red blood cells consist of many, many trillions.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a large component
Isn't it amazing
of what we are.
Something like that? A frog has that too, right?
Right. Yep.
Or a toad.
Yeah.
Or a snake. They all have this kind of a thing. Don't you find it amazing that anything is there? I mean, I'm just saying it's really something that we do that. But then we have an extended capability. These technologies are extension of that capability to develop things in a way that none of the other creatures can. We've come out of an evolutionary process, and we're sort of, in a sense, unique, able to take consciously the measure of things around us. I don't think a crocodile understands about Big Bang, or could, inherently.
I don't know if you've heard about elephants.
Oh, you've got a crocodile that can take. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
But elephants are like very social creatures, and I don't know if there's been mass suicides or something, but lately in India, for example, there's been battles between the local people and some elephant communities.
Rogue elephants, like?
It could be, and
maybe they're freaking out. They're moving in on their habitat and stuff.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I mean, an elephant doesn't have the ability to type on a keyboard or develop these things.
No other creature.
In many ways, they probably have an understanding of life.
They understand things. They sense things and know things. Yeah.
And in a sense, if they had additional tools or more technological sophistication available to them, we could probably learn more about elephants. And there's many research programs done with monkeys and having them interact and do tests
Sheldrake, have you ever
choose
run
between different menus.
Rupert, the 100 monkey, where a monkey would learn something, let's say in Africa, how to crack a coconut or something, and it will be without any transmission. We have no telegraph wires or anything. Monkeys don't have, but the thing gets to people across the planet, and they pick up on it. Morphic resonancy, they call it. The idea there's a different kind of communication that goes on at that level. But the ability to influence, like birds make nests and some they can, but we really are in some sort of a new dimension in terms of this evolutionary process, don't you think? It seems to be the hominoid line.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
But also researchers have looked at dolphins recently again and have been very surprised at the intelligence they're finding there too. So I think a lot of it is just interfacing properly with other species. For example, maybe we could be doing more to learn more about them, for them to give us information.
I wonder if I could segue over to a little thing like, say, for instance, we have technology, we have a capability. We've had a little discussion. We disagree a little bit on whether or not we're going to be able to destroy the whole species.
Right.
With it. I think it's the case, but that's another question. It's close. We could really have that capability to destroy so credibly with our technological extension and the fighting and so forth. And then it comes over to, we also have, you got a lot of people say, we have an incredible capability of providing for everybody. I do believe the United States of America, with combines being driven by robot things, could create enough grain to feed the whole world.
Right.
With the, you know, that we got the capability to provide for everybody in a way that never has been the case in history. We're coming out of a situation. We have a gap between what we're capable of doing collectively as a society in terms of human betterment and what we seem able to be able to realize with the institutions we've inherited out of history. The situation has changed fundamentally. We have that, and then we don't have the ability to, in a positive thing, we don't have the systems in place. Do you think what is the software program that would motivate or inform the political economic process on this planet? What is the software program that informs the decision making that Buckminster Fuller, God bless him, used to say we need an operating manual for spaceship Earth. We live on a spaceship. We live on a whole system. We have certain kind of software is comparable to education of the human being, leaders of the human being, to the realities that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is there a comparable thing to computing software that would be relevant to the means by which we would have enlightened leadership rather than what we have?
I think there are very few people that are in control of certain things.
They're up in the cockpit, and they're driving for hell. A lot of people say, you know.
One way.
And they don't have a vision. They don't have a comprehensive vision of the whole system, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's hard for any of us maybe to know that, or we like to think that. Well, I think that one way to use technology, computers as a tool, would be to have people vote on what their what changes they would like to need. More than beyond just elections, I'm talking about. This could be sort of like a software system for humanity.
Right.
Where the people who may be in charge, they would have additional influence based on these votes or elections for what kind of things should be changed.
It could inform them of where the people think. Feedback loop.
Feedback loop.
Yeah.
But maybe even having people that are in charge, having them, in a way, delegate authority to these collections of voting people. So the voting group actually becomes in charge in a way. And whatever that collective vote comes to be, that would be the way to proceed.
That would be what they call democracy.
But maybe more in a micro sense, maybe down even to small tasks, all the way up to larger. Like right now we vote for a candidate and then they're off on their own.
And also decision making. Somebody's written about the wisdom of the swarm or something, or the wisdom of the mass.
Right.
There is a wisdom in that is not able to be tapped efficiently because it's always been a few people who run everything and that sort of thing. But the comparable thing to that, so that's something. So you're optimistic. I asked you in the thing. You're optimistic for the human prospect.
I am, yes.
You don't think we need any kind of a new software programming? If we had a different suppose you've got institutions. This is is there a software? What is the comparable software pattern that operates the political economic process?
Oh, I'm not really sure about that. Politics is really just
it's politics.
It's discussion. It's communication back and forth. I think that's the core of what it is.
And there's not a software analogy. We had a software analogy for chess, or we have a software analogy for other things, like the human organism.
Right.
There's some people talk about Gaia. You know, they talk about it. And the Vedics have been telling us it's all one seamless web. Everything's interconnected. Even the ecology, we're all part of a whole system. And there's a software thing for the human organism, right? And so, and then the hardware. And then you're talking about so. What is it that operates it's just a political, educational process, or a consciousness, a level of consciousness that is, we're advanced over Australopithecine or Homo habilis, I would submit, right? There's something new. Are we coming to a time when we're going to come into a new relationship to the universe the way we did when we transited from being Homo habilis to Homo sapien?
I
Do you
think it's
Or
hard for us
do you sense
to.
a major, like a birthing to a new relationship?
It seems
in
like what you're
universe, or
saying
a
is
speciation or something.
having like a structure for society, or trying to pin down what it really is, how it operates.
Yeah.
We may not even. I think, in a sense, we can influence the design of that. I don't know that we can maybe eventually even pin it down or determine or scientifically analyze what the structure is.
All right, yeah. If we can get, somebody's come up with a number of atoms in the universe. I mean, that's pretty where they're getting a sense or a fix on the reality.
Right.
And we're coming out of a historical thing that's being qualitatively changed, or just quantitative. It's just a quantitative change that's coming. Or is it a qualitative, like a pregnancy? You go 9 months in a gestational state, or in evolution, it becomes it's what they call Stephen Jay Gould. You get quantitative change, change, and then there's punctuated equilibrium, and there's a new species, or a new something appears. That's part of the birthing thing. Do you think we're at a stage where that might be the characteristics of the time in which we live? We're about to leave from one condition out of which we emerge, like leaving the womb? Or does that not make sense to you? Or
no, it does make sense.
It does. At a certain
I
maybe
think that
mystical or
when you deal with time scales,
meta level, yeah.
When you deal with these types of time scales, though, we're looking at light from, in astronomy, we're looking at light from very great distances.
13.7 billion years.
In comparison, our time here is very short.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to even gauge if whether, I mean, we've advanced a lot in these recent hundreds of years. It's hard to put all these time scales together, though, and really gauge whether we're reaching a new point, or a new horizon, or some more exponential growth. I think that you can't really make that determination.
We can't make it. We can make an analogy between the individual organism, and that would be a frog, or a toad, or a snake, or a human being, in terms of hardware, cells, a system, and the software, computer, DNA, that makes the thing a system. But we can't make that comparison within social systems when we get beyond the individual. So we don't have a, like Richard Dawkins talks about the selfish gene. He was just touring in New York or in America, and he also talks about the meme, you know, cultural things that are like a genetic thing that are passed on from one to another. We don't have a comprehensive understanding of the situation in which we interrelate with one another, or do we? I mean, our intelligence agencies don't seem to be doing well. Our academic agencies are falling down. They're not providing a operating manual that involves everybody in a systems way with the efficiency that the human organism does for an individual, do they?
I think we need an
You understand what I'm saying?
I think we need an incentive or a reason to actually pursue with that.
Get liberated or something. Or I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think
it's a software program, maybe.
If you think about the role of the United Nations, for example, in keeping peace around the world.
That's an institution.
You may say they failed in many ways.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's enough enough of a reason to, if we're talking about somehow studying society and interactions, or maybe developing a better scheme.
Yeah.
I mean, economics is driven by the exchange of money, and we're talking about generating wealth, and I don't know, there may be a better system than that, for example. But
well, you're a programmer. Why don't you come up with a program for operating, for the design of our geopolitical structure? Why don't you just set that as your task for this weekend? You come up with a programmer, and how will you do it? And how, you know, because it's an educational thing, it's a consciousness raising thing, because it has to do with relating to consciousness. Maybe it's educational.
Well, just to give you an example.
Education is like software. Learning is like software comparison.
Well, there's been some large free software projects out on the
that's
internet.
A good thing, right?
And it's
open
interesting
source,
that
there's something called open source. That's good.
It's a little different than free software. There's actually a distinction.
Okay.
But it's interesting that there's many commercial software providers, companies, that once they see a new free software product out there in the online world, they're actually forced, their hand is forced. They need to, in later months or years, they need to release their own proprietary code.
That's what they want
software.
for voting, don't they? Well, some people want that for the voting process.
That too,
and they should make the code be and Mr. Obama, he's like to be president a couple of years out or something. He said they're going to make all contracts within the government process totally open to everybody to see. They have a system to be open on the internet.
That would be good, a transparent system.
Transparent, so people can really see it. Yeah.
There's also there's paper ballot-based voting systems which don't even involve cryptography, but they just involve, for example, filling out a ballot card that once you fill it out properly, you hand it to a machine. It verifies it, breaks it into 3 mini ballots, and you actually keep one of the ballots.
Right.
And then at the end of the process, everybody's name is listed on the internet, and the remaining 2 ballots, or the information is out there listed. Everybody can check that all the votes were counted.
If everybody had good understanding of the reality, it's an understanding of what the reality is, but the reality changes with the advancement of our capability to affect the environment and create it anew. There was a fellow, Gordon Child, wrote, "Man makes himself." We make an environment, and that environment is changing. And do you sense that we have a capability, a technologically augmented, scientifically augmented capability to provide life support for the human society within an appropriate ecological context with the other creatures and so forth, that we have a capability that our institutions do not allow us to realize? Does that make sense to you or not? Or do you think it's just a matter of muddling with the systems that we had and that things are going to be okay? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
what is your sense on that big existential
just to put it back to the software analogy,
yes, please.
The successful community with the free software package,
okay.
Thousands or millions of people are using the software.
Good.
They're no longer using the commercial product, and in fact, the corporation makes a decision that they're going to release their software as free software too, so their hand is forced. So in a way, you've got these set institutions, maybe many of them with a legacy approach to dealing with things, maybe not embracing technology as rapidly as you would want them to. And I think that
the zeitgeist is forcing their hand, the spirit of the age.
I think in a very, very slow way, actually.
Slow.
I think that
I agree with you on the slow. I'd like to see it happen by Tuesday, if you don't mind. You know. Yeah.
So they would need some more powerful incentive for them to budge, basically.
Well, they would need a vision, or I mean, like in the end, software is a vision or a design. A design. We have the idea of a design revolution, maybe of some sort, to where they understand that the situation is perhaps altered from what we've inherited out of the past. Ideas of responsibility and ideas we've always had not enough, or the idea of scarcity. We may be transcending that and so forth. And the zeitgeist may have, the technology may have altered fundamentally the zeitgeist or the context, and the capability. It's like a quickening within a pregnancy. We're getting to the point where the ancient scourges we can address. We can do these things, and we just need some sort of a system that's going to be able to involve everybody, and that everybody's important. It's a vision thing or an educational thing, in a certain sense of the whole body politic. And every cell in the organism is connected to every other one in a way where they all get what they need, and you know.
Well, talking about those institutions, I think that when technology gets to the point where it's used in such a way that they realize that it's very obvious for them to make a change.
Yeah.
So they'll look
have we got there yet? Have we got a system that we can be trustworthy with? My sense is they don't have a vision. I mean, it's maybe coming from the arts or from some of the things. I like Bucky Fuller and some views of things like that read but that they're still going with assumptions that have come out of the Olympic system and the reptilian core and all this kind of stuff, and they don't have a vision of an alternative. They need new software. We need software programmers or something in terms of seeing that directive DNA in terms of social institutions, including political and economic institutions. It seems to me maybe that's the work of public access television, sister institutions, to bring a higher level of consciousness to the awareness of
I guess,
maybe
in a way,
including those guys operating
you're
outdated
talking about or
systems.
hoping to reprogram an institution.
Yeah,
We'd
like
have to
a
know,
planet Earth, like the whole planet or something, yeah.
We'd have to know about, for example,
There's some problems there?
well, these these institutions, they're not transparent. They're closed off. So we need to look into them, see what's actually taking place.
Or what's actually maybe a new reality against which they... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, even communication from upper management to lower management, we don't really know what's taking place. If a lot of that was transparent, then we could think, maybe we should make a change here, a change there, or reprogram the whole thing.
And the context within which all this is taking place. If you're at a table and there's only one hot dog, it's different than if you're with 10 people and you're at a table where there's 20 hot dogs in one. It's different. If you're transcending scarcity, perhaps. We're transcending scarcity, which has been the context in which we evolved, and the context is altered, and we could have a kind of like liberation that might be characteristic now to offset the possibility I think we can destroy the whole species. It's an incredibly interesting time to be alive. What we need are some good computer programmers like yourself, it would seem to me, to come up with the patterns that make it possible to realize our full collective potentiality as a whole system on planet Earth, that is humanity and the ecology within which it finds itself.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I think wealth for the average person has improved.
Yeah.
And, for example, we don't really have a situation where people are dying of poverty as much as people are obese, actually. There's more
in
people,
this country?
I think worldwide statistics now, there's more people that are overweight than are actually starving from food.
Kwashiorkor, a lot of that is the people. We had half the population lives on less than $1.50 a day or something.
Right.
I mean, it serves well the 20% in each country, and you got small glass that runs everything, like they used to have kings and dukes and things. And now they got this, but it doesn't serve well. And the question is it able to serve well the whole system, rather than just taking to the needs of... It serves only well the people who are well ensconced already, and they get better, and the people... 80,000 demonstrations in communist China last year by the people who say that they're getting the short end and it's not going to serve their interests. And other signs of the people uprising against the power structure that doesn't have vision that involves the whole system.
Right.
You need new software?
Well, I mean, there's 80,000 if you put that in perspective compared to the number of people in China. I mean, it's still a small number.
You think that's small? 80,000? Serious
It's
demonstration by people rebelling?
It's
800,000 people and 800 million people are $2 a day?
Right. No, it's a good showing for those people, but to actually, I'm curious about what the other hundreds of thousands of people are thinking. We don't really know that information unless there was some survey conducted or if they had access to some type of connectivity.
The others, you're talking about the ones who are doing well.
The others in China, everybody.
Well, there's some people doing well. There's 20% maybe doing well. You know, and they're in 8-star hotels, and they're in gated communities and so forth, and they're doing that. Right. But it's the thing that for the I'm sorry, it's off on a field. I just think we need computer programming of our social and political institutions in order to move with the times, and programming's really important, and I really congratulate you on your successful career in that direction, particularly involved, and congratulate you on having got involved with Manhattan Neighborhood Network, because we're going to help set out some of those templates that are going to help change the world from here, don't you think?
I agree with that.
You would like to do that?
Yes.
You'd like to see the world changed in a positive direction
Definitely.
and realize its potential?
Yes.
That's our mission, I think, isn't it?
I think
Maybe
so.
that's our mission as a species on the planet? Do you think?
I don't know that
I don't want
we
to
can
put you
ever
on
know
the
that.
spot. Okay. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lester Veczey.
That's right.
And that's a good Hungarian name.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
there's like Thomas Zaz and a lot of good Hungarian people have contributed to the intellectual